in my tours, which is why I found the perfect combination. Minneapolis Trolley Tours does this amazing candlelight ghost tour that you have to check out. It's an extremely immersive experience. It's a trolley trip that starts out at a haunted mansion, traveling around Minneapolis locations, exposing ghost stories that the public and business owners would rather left untold. Then a tour of the aforementioned haunted mansion where ghosts of past residents from the 1800s reside, plus a lot of surprises to discover. Next, experience Gertrude's After Hours. Did I mention Gertrude is the mansion's most famous ghost? Maybe she'll show up. And you finish up the tour at Gertrude's Lounge in the haunted basement of the mansion with refreshments and Q&A. The trolleys are climate controlled and the mansion is restored to perfection. Check out MinneapolisTrolleyTours.com for more information. Have you ever met someone who not only can help you on a deep spiritual level, but also potentially change your life? Refined Divine is an extremely gifted psychic medium who travels the nation and lives right here in the Midwest. And she offers mediumship, mentorship, house and business parties, energy healing, palm readings, and so much more. Refined Divine has helped thousands, and she can help you.
Hi, this is Psychic Medium Deb. I cannot wait to hear from you. You can go to refineddivinepsychic.com.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Clear tonight with a low of 23, then Tuesday rain and snow expected with a high of 36. The music is still the hottest at Crooner's Supper Club in Fridley. Crooner's is located just north of I-694 off Highway 65 and Moore Lake Drive. View their upcoming music schedules and food menus at croonersloungemn.com.
Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host, guest, random reptoid, or chupacabra may not necessarily reflect those of AM 950 Radio, its affiliates, or its sponsors. Now, it's time to step into the unknown. There are things people experience but never talk about. A shadow moving in the corner, flickering of the lights, a disembodied voice. We invite you to talk with us. Share your story, share your experience, because this isn't just your story, this is our story. This is GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
And this is GhostBox Radio on AM 950, where every night we talk about the paranormal, ufology, Bigfoot, and so much more. My name is Greg Bakun. Thank you very much for joining us. Happy Monday. I hope that you had a fantastic weekend. And for what it's worth, I had a very good weekend. Right before the program started, we heard that little bit about advertising for Crooner's Supper Club. I was there yesterday for the Matt McNeil 15th anniversary dinner. And I just want to say the food there, I've not had their food before. Matter of fact, I've to be honest, I've never been there for one of their dinners before, and the food was outstanding. I had a braised beef rib, and it was very, very good. They also had walleye, which Matt himself had said that it was the best walleye that he's ever had. And I just want to say that was quite the event yesterday. A lot of tears, a lot of it was very emotional. Matt's 15th anniversary celebration. I was really surprised. He broke down and started blabbering like a small baby. Quite frankly, nah, none of that happened. He was close though. He said a couple times it was a little overwhelming. But I'll tell you what I found was really, to me, actually beautiful. It's, as many of you know, I am single. I do not have any kids. And there was a moment that Matt, his son, who is in his 20s, is in the audience, and his son gets up and delivers a very heartfelt well wish. And I see a glance, them looking at each other, father and son. And I thought to myself at that moment, that's the payoff, isn't it? That's really what it kind of comes down to, is that moment that you're looking at your own. And this is somebody who's never had children, and you just that pride and being proud between the two of them. You could just see, and you could see the love. And that was something that I love seeing that. And it was It was very beautiful. It's a very nice event. And, once again, Matt, happy 15, and really appreciate it. Speaking of children, we're going to talk a little bit younger, though, here, because we have this really interesting opportunity. And my guest tonight is somebody that I've known for a couple years. You have heard me talk about the Doctor Who convention console room, and I've been going there since it started 300 years ago. And it was there that Christopher and I had been on a couple panels together talking about things, I don't know, such as Doctor Who. But then he had mentioned to me at this last one that he writes books that might be of interest for this program. And we talked a little bit more. And these are really, sounds really cool. And it's for a different audience. Christopher Bahn is a writer and editor. He's from Minneapolis. He's homegrown here. We're going to talk about the books that he's created, but he has also contributed to the Amazing Animal series for elementary age readers, covering cuddly critters like otters, seals, and scorpions. Bahn's writing about film and television, music, science fiction, and other topics have appeared in the AV Club, MSNBC.com, St. Paul Pioneer Press, Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine, Clark's World, Momentum, Spaces, The Rake, Request, City Pages, City Search, Sidewalk. The list goes on and on and on. Bahn was the lead editor for the AV Club's Minneapolis St. Paul edition from 2004 to 2010, and an associate editor of The Rake, or at The Rake, and the Minnesota editions of City Search and Sidewalk. We're going to talk more about how to get a hold of him, but you go to Christopher Bahn, BAHN.com, and you can find out a lot more. Christopher, welcome to GhostBox Radio.
Thanks for having me. This is really exciting.
Well, you will see if you still think so at the end of this. But what we're going to be talking about tonight are the type of books that Christopher has been writing, and they're they're paranormal books for young readers, but they're not young adult readers, right? They're just a little bit younger than that.
Yeah, it's geared toward like 5th to 8th graders, I guess. It's the series is called Enduring Mysteries, and it's put out by a publisher called Creative Company. They're based in Mankato, family-run business, and they publish all kinds of fiction and nonfiction books for kids. But this series that I wrote is nonfiction books that kind of explain the lore and the history and what it's all aboutness of things like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and Area 51. Since I've got the titles here right in front of me, it's Atlantis, Bigfoot, Near-Death Experiences, Loch Ness Monster, Area 51, and Sea Monsters to round out the set.
And so when I was going through these and I saw near-death experiences, I'm thinking, well, that's a bit of a... I know it's not weighty by any stretch of imagination, but it's certainly... I didn't really expect that amongst this type of topics for like 6th or 7th graders. How did you come up with the different topics to cover?
Well, the topics were kind of given to me by the publisher, so all of them I found interesting to write about, and I just dove into them, and it was really interesting. Near-death experiences actually was the one that I was kind of most worried about writing, because it's in some ways it is the weightiest because it's all about death. And how do you make that not a complete bummer to write about for one?
The bummer series of books written by Christopher Bahn. Yeah, no, absolutely.
But as I dove into that one specifically, it was really interesting how much real scientific research there is going on into this subject by like mainstream researchers. There's scientists that are doing MRI research. There was at least one case where somebody doing MRI research on brain research on someone happened to have their subject in the MRI machine when he had a heart attack and passed away, which is, a completely, of course, that's very tragic, but it's also a huge scientific opportunity because that's not something that you can normally get a subject to do during research into near-death experiences, to actually have someone die when you can study the brain.
Right. So what do you know what happened? If it's near death, does that mean that they came back and that they're able to kind of get?
Well, in that particular case, unfortunately, they weren't able to revive him, but they were able to study the electronics of not the electronics, but the electrical signals of the brain. As the person passed away, which normally you're not able to get that kind of topics. But there have been other scientists who have been able to simulate out-of-body experiences through electrical stimulation of the brain, things like that. And it's an area of science where you can't get too close to the subject because it would be horribly unethical to bring someone near death for science, right? So they have to try and sort of work around the subject as best they can in various ways. There was a really interesting study done by, I'm forgetting who the scientist was, but he worked with an emergency room and was able to, as long as it wasn't something that would interfere with treatment, they would put electrodes on the heads of people coming in for heart attacks and things like that. And then he would ask them, and he would play recordings of, a voice saying various phrases like, the kind of thing that they would use to wake up the Winter Soldier, orange, various just random words. And then he would ask them later, do you remember any of this stuff?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I think the study was still going on when I was writing the book, so I don't know exactly how it all worked out, but it's one of the things that I do mention in that book.
Sure. And it's really interesting that they allow that, because, it's just, it really goes to show that they're putting some, credence to what's happening in your brain in those situations, though sometimes it may not be exactly related to near-death experience per se, but that has to be something that becomes a part of it just by osmosis if something were to happen. So that's really interesting. And already you got Doug in the comments. He's saying, I was a child who loved the paranormal in the 90s. I wish there was books like this when I was young. Why did they go with this topic? Do you know why your publisher went with this topic?
I have to think it's for the same reason that I would have read them when I was that age. This stuff is just fascinating. It's, as you know, because you have a radio show about it all the time.
Some call it a radio show. I don't know if it's really good enough. Yeah.
But yeah, when I was a kid, I was absolutely fascinated by this stuff. There was, I'm old enough that they still used the Dewey Decimal System when I was a kid, and I would park myself in front of the 000s, which is where they put all the books on, ghosts and Bigfoot, and on any that cryptozoology stuff. It went into that section, and that's where I would be, and I would just read everything that I could find on pretty much anything in that section.
And are you old enough to have been someone who used to view like In Search Of?
Absolutely, yeah, right? Yeah.
And now you're doing your own version of that, because we were kids when we were watching this stuff. Mm-hmm. And this is the same sort of thing. This is, you have to think that this is pretty cool that you're writing something that you are going to probably have a positive impact on young people who might decide to look more into this, become more involved with this, become paranormal investigators. Who knows? It's very cool.
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, if nothing else, I'm hoping that this is the sort of thing that just might encourage kids to reading anything, you know. But I think there's so many aspects to these stories. It's whether or not you believe, you know, in Bigfoot, the story behind it is fascinating. The history is fascinating. The stories that people tell and why they believe them, it's very interesting to me, and I hope to other people as well.
And I would think, I mean, I haven't read them. I don't know how to read, but I would think that your books are more open-ended anyway. There isn't a final line that, you know, Bigfoot is real or Bigfoot is not real. This seems like something that you let people, like you said, the origins are super exciting and fascinating, that leave it up to them to come to their own conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain cases where, like for the Loch Ness Monster, that famous picture of the creature rising from the lake and that sort of plesiosaur-shaped thing. That's the most famous picture. It's almost certainly a hoax. Because they did find the model of you know, what was built and things like that. And so, you know, you bring up the story of the photo because it's such a huge part of the lore. You kind of have to bring up the hoax part of it.
Absolutely.
But there's lots of stuff that is still open-ended. And there are people, you know, even now there's organizations in Inverness, the city right next to Loch Ness, the Loch Ness, what are they called? The Loch Ness Project. Has a website that's running right now that collects stories that people tell of sightings, and there's still people posting sightings, you know, to this day.
My favorite about the Loch Ness Monster was about a year or two ago. They had a boat that constantly goes around, and they're doing audio recordings, and they're hearing some amazing sounds coming from the loch, only to realize that they weren't recording. I will be honest. I believe a lot of stuff. You don't have to go far to see how far I believe in stuff. Loch Ness Monster, not one of them though. That in my opinion, for what it's worth. But the whole thing is, though, that's just my opinion. And you're giving kids an opportunity to. It's reading. It's allowing their imagination to grow and to. I mean, it could inspire them to write stories. I mean, there's so much that can be jumped off from what you're doing here. I mean, that's really pretty cool.
Yeah, one of the guys that really, he was important for research, but also as sort of a guidepost in sort of how to think about how to approach these things, was a British paleontologist named Darren Naish, who wrote, he wrote one of the books behind me, if you were viewing our Zoom, Ancient Sea Reptiles.
Like 1,000 books behind you, Christopher. Come on.
He was one of the main scientists giving advice for Prehistoric Planet, the show on Apple. But he also wrote a book called Hunting Monsters, Cryptozoology and the Reality Behind the Myths. And he really wants to believe in the Loch Ness Monster and in Bigfoot and these things. And he talks about that stuff. But he also wrote about the history and sort of some of the people behind spreading the legends, in some cases clearly inventing the legends. And still at the end of it, he would still like to believe that these things are real. He's like Scully from the X-Files. He'll believe it if the evidence is there. He's waiting for the evidence. As people present it, he's going to analyze it, and he's pretty sharp and knows his biology, so you'd have to do a lot to fool him. But he's ready to believe if it's there. And that's that's one of the things that I wanted to do with these books also is, even if it's something that I personally am not a believer in, and none of this stuff is necessarily stuff that I want to stay open-minded about all of it. But I'm more like Scully also.
Yep.
Where was I going with this?
Why don't I do this? Why don't I let you collect your thoughts here, because I'm going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation, stuff about where you fall within this area. I'd like to talk about a little bit. No right or wrong answer with that, by the way, at all, just so you know. And got some comments in the comment section, and I just think that this is the coolest thing. Author Christopher Bahn is with us. We're talking about paranormal books for young readers. Stick around. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. Greg Bakun here. I love historic tours of Minneapolis and seeing everything it has to offer. But if you know me, I like to include a little spooky in my tours, which is why I found the perfect combination. Minneapolis Trolley Tours does this amazing candlelight ghost tour that you have to check out. It's an extremely immersive experience. It's a trolley trip that starts out at a haunted mansion, traveling around Minneapolis locations exposing ghost stories that the public and business owners would rather left untold. Then a tour of the aforementioned haunted mansion where ghosts of past residents from the 1800s reside, plus a lot of surprises to discover. Next, experience Gertrude's After Hours. Did I mention Gertrude is the mansion's most famous ghost? Maybe she'll show up. And you finish up the tour at Gertrude's Lounge in the haunted basement of the mansion with refreshments and Q&A. The trolleys are climate controlled and the mansion is restored to perfection. Check out MinneapolisTrolleyTours.com for more information. Have you ever met someone who not only can help you on a deep spiritual level, but also potentially change your life? Refined Divine is an extremely gifted psychic medium who travels the nation and lives right here in the Midwest. And she offers mediumship, mentorship, house and business parties, energy healing, palm readings, and so much more. Refined Divine has helped thousands, and she can help you.
Hi, this is Psychic Medium Deb. I cannot wait to hear from you. You can go to refineddivinepsychic.com.
Greg Bakun here. Like you, I love good, fresh, delicious food. So I want to tell you about this treasure in Roseville called Maverick's Real Roast Beef. Maverick's has the best roast beef sandwiches I've ever had. Made fresh every order. Add fries or onion rings dropped in the fryer when ordered, and you have a winning combination. Maverick's Real Roast Beef has a lot more than roast beef, so check out their website, mavericksbeef.com, or check out their restaurant on Lexington in Roseville. Now, as we enter into April, we are just a couple weeks away from the Midwest Metaparacon, and I just want to remind folks that GhostBox Radio is the official podcast for that convention, and I really hope that some of you are able to go. If you have not gone yet, or have not signed up, I would really like to ask that you all do so, and want to remind everybody to sign up for the convention. You just need to put in the special code GhostBox, and you're going to get 10% off of the total amount of the entrance fee for that. You just need to go to metaparapro.com. There you're going to see Midwest Paracon. Go there, put in your code GhostBox, get 10% off. I'll be there, but for a reason for you to really go, people like Jason Haas is going to be there, Sherry DeBenedetti, other great speakers in the paranormal. It's going to be great. It's in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and I think that it's going to be a lot of fun. We hope to see you out there. If you do go out there, come by, say hi. I would love to meet you. It's going to be a great convention, and I plan on being live a number of times throughout the weekend, actually, probably on the GhostBox with Greg Bakun Facebook page. Go there, check it out if you haven't done so yet. I would also like to remind folks, if you are watching us on the GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun Facebook page, please go and like, but also remember you can support this page by sending stars. Stars help the algorithm for Facebook so more people get access to the show, because honestly, that's really what it kind of comes down to. So please consider doing so. Tonight, my guest is Christopher Bahn. We are talking about 6 books that he has written. I mean, he's written a lot of stuff, and that's always been fun listening to him at Council Room, where I've listened to him the most. But he's written about paranormal stuff, and I want to talk about that a little bit more tonight. In the comments, Linda says, "I spy a TARDIS." I was laughing to myself because I thought, what if it's not Doctor Who? Maybe Christopher just likes to collect models of police boxes, right? I mean, you never know. I mean, I don't know. I do know, though. I do know in this case very well.
Well, I've checked that model, and it is not bigger on the inside. So,
so it is
maybe it is a police box.
It is a police box. You know, the official Minnesota Police Box fan club, one member. So yeah, no, this is fun. Linda also says, she said, I used to make games of gory stuff, called it Buckets of Blood. Great. I scanned through this stuff very quickly. So I read that as she used to read a set of books called Buckets of Blood, but she in fact did that, and I'm not surprised. I know Linda. I'm not actually surprised to hear that at the end of the day. Now, you had mentioned yourself, Christopher, writing these books. You know, you have an interest in them, but do you generally not believe, or you're just very open-minded about it? I'm just curious.
I would call myself an interested skeptic,
Sure.
I guess. I don't necessarily. I think it's very, 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 very unlikely that, for instance, Bigfoot is real. But I find the stories around it fascinating. I find the fact that, for instance, there were creatures exactly like the Bigfoot legend. Gigantopithecus is what it's called, is a 10-foot tall extinct gorilla or ape-like creature. That maybe that creature lived longer than we have fossil evidence for, and perhaps that creature is what gave rise to the legend. Maybe there was a real Bigfoot, but it doesn't exist now. Things like that. So, I try to be like that paleontologist I was mentioning, Darren Naish, where I find the subject fun and fascinating. I would love to believe it. Mostly, probably not, but if nothing else, it's no fun to just say, nah, that can't be real. So I try to keep an open mind that way.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Well, I have had, I will say that the near-death experiences book, that's the one area where I especially kind of go, maybe. And in part because as I was doing the research, I was kind of convinced by what I was reading that maybe there is something going on. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it means there's direct evidence for life after death or anything like that, but they're finding, interesting, kind of uncanny results. And, I've had a couple of experiences, nothing flashy, but things that made me think, maybe, I don't know for sure. It was two of my pets passed away, and in both cases, this is years apart from each other. But the next night or a few days later, I had a dream that I was visited by the cat, and nothing really happened. I just saw my cat and just knew that he was saying goodbye and that he was going to be okay. And I woke up the next day and I felt better. And it was so uncanny. And I don't know if it could have been just my brain helping me deal with the grief, and there's nothing supernatural. It was just one of my, subconscious ways of dealing with it. Maybe not. There's no way to tell. And that's one of the things that's, why I like to keep an open mind.
And, it's such an interesting thing because, I don't want to. The way I'm going to say this makes it sound like we're on two different sides, and we're not on two different sides. But I find it interesting because you have that, and you also have the idea too of like, if my belief is in that kind of stuff, like you're right. It could be a dream that just it makes you feel better. Your brain is doing something, or if it resonates and makes you feel good. I don't mind saying that my cat visited me. You know what I mean? It's such an interesting thing, and both sides work, right? There isn't a right or wrong to that because everyone has the right to have the right feelings about that stuff that they do. They have that right. It's just such an interesting way of looking at it, isn't it? I mean, and then there isn't anything, as far as how we exist, that there is any sort of real concrete way to quantify it, but yet a lot of us will be just like it felt right, even though there isn't anything scientific that proves that it was Linus coming to see me or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
It's really interesting, and like I said, and I cannot overstate this. There isn't a wrong side to that. I mean, this is a paranormal show. Everyone knows my stand on a lot of these subjects, but having folks come on and being able to say, yeah, I'm not sure. There's some great stuff that's happened, but I can't say for sure what it is. That is totally fine. And I think that's great. I also think I go back to an interview that I had with a guy named, Kenny W. Irish. He wrote a book about monsters. Some people call them monsters. And I asked him, would you rather not have to know the truth, if the truth, like either one way or the other, to be honest, because there's something about being in that middle, like they could exist, they couldn't exist, maybe, and there's that you just don't know area is kind of the fun part about it as well, because that also leads to a lot of like more of just it leads to a lot more research and interest, I think, and I don't know. I find that's interesting. Would you like to know a definitive answer on some of that stuff?
I think so. I know certainly with near-death experiences, eventually I'll find out the answer, but I'm in no rush to do that.
Right. Yeah, you'll either one way it'll be like, oh, I was right, or the other way there won't be any sort of answer at all, right?
Yeah. But as far as factual things go, or scientific things, knowing an answer just gets you a step to the next question. Mm-hmm. So I would certainly like to know more about what's real, because then you can go on further and say, well, what's next? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's not like a fictional story where you have to have an ending. Although, most of the great stories about monsters have suspense as a big part of it, and the endings usually try and hit that gray area to keep the suspense going, because that's really where the fun of this sort of subject lives.
I think it does. I absolutely agree with that. And I think that, that's the thing. Now, it sounds to me your approach to this is, I'm not going to say scientific per se, but fact-based, right?
Yeah. I mean, I come from a journalism background, so I did my research. I got a stack of books, literally taller than I am, to research all 6 of these, and just went through and tried to figure out what actually is the Bigfoot legend. What's it all about? What's the history behind it? And did the same thing for all 6 books. And, in part you have to do that because you're writing for younger readers.
Yep.
If you're writing about Area 51, they don't know what Area 51 is. You have to explain, like, yeah, it's a base in Nevada where, they were building planes, and, Roswell hooks up to it. Well, they say, what's Roswell? So you have to explain what Roswell is and what the legend behind Roswell is and why it's important, because it's not even in Area 51 and, things like that. So it's a matter of trying to break it down into the smallest digestible chunks of information and then organize it in a way that makes sense. And it was, no matter what you're doing, I'm writing a different series for the same company right now on alternative energies, like solar power and hydropower and things like that. Much different kind of subject, but you break it down the same way. You're trying to take this complicated subject and find a way to make it A, interesting, and B, explicable, so that people can understand what it is and why it's important to know about it.
And that, like, you have to do it, because these are not long books at all, nor should they be, because you don't want them to lose interest in it, and it's a good starting point for it. I remember when I was a kid, there was like a bunch of books that were like this, not paranormal, but like what you're talking about, like alternative energies, just more of like how stuff happens, like in different fields and stuff. One being about television, and that was something that was my, started my desire for being involved in television somewhere, just being interested in television, even, just if I'm just a researcher on it. So, those are very interesting, and I can't imagine. I can imagine that there's some elements that are rather easy to it, but but to be able to know what's right and what's not right to put in, I think that has to be something that has to have some kind of discipline to it, right?
Yeah, for sure. And part of that was just doing enough research that I could look at what I had and read enough about it that I could figure out the through line to the story myself.
Yep.
And there's a certain format to each of these 6 books. That there's always 4 main sections, a sort of, an explainer of the general topic, the history behind it, kind of a pop culture view, and then what's, kind of looking forward. And then there's little sidebars that appear throughout the book as well. And knowing that I had to fill all of those in the different ways, it gives you a structure and it gives you a way to think about what you're doing.
That's great.
But you also have to do enough research that you could write a book 3 times as long, or you don't understand the topic well enough to be able to write about it. So I ended up having the luxury of having a lot of stuff to have to throw away because I just couldn't fit it in.
Well, do you end up getting edited quite a bit? Not like as far as like people don't want information in, but maybe they think that there's something else. So then you can change out maybe some parts of it because you've done enough of the research that you're able to maybe move things around a little bit easier.
Yeah, I worked with an editor on the series. Most of what we did was kind of language stuff, finding ways to say things a little bit more simply, because I tend to, use a lot of long words. And in a series like this, you have to use the word cryptozoology a lot. So there's that. But we didn't end up changing most of the books around very drastically, it's good. I mean, when you're a writer, the last thing you want is to have to go back and completely revise something in the middle of it. So thankfully, none of that had to happen.
Right. Absolutely. Christopher, why don't we go ahead and do this? Let's take our next break. When we come back, I have more questions. I want to talk more about these books in general, plus the comments. We got Christopher Bahn with us tonight. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. Greg Bakun here. I love historic tours of Minneapolis and seeing everything it has to offer. But if you know me, I like to include a little spooky in my tours, which is why I found the perfect combination. Minneapolis Trolley Tours does this amazing candlelight ghost tour that you have to check out. It's an extremely immersive experience. It's a trolley trip that starts out at a haunted mansion, traveling around Minneapolis locations exposing ghost stories that the public and business owners would rather left untold. Then a tour of the aforementioned haunted mansion where ghosts of past residents from the 1800s reside, plus a lot of surprises to discover. Next, experience Gertrude's After Hours. Did I mention Gertrude is the mansion's most famous ghost? Maybe she'll show up. And you finish up the tour at Gertrude's Lounge in the haunted basement of the mansion with refreshments and Q&A. The trolleys are climate controlled and the mansion is restored to perfection. Check out MinneapolisTrolleyTours.com for more information. Have you ever met someone who not only can help you on a deep spiritual level, but also potentially change your life? Refined Divine is an extremely gifted psychic medium who travels the nation and lives right here in the Midwest. And she offers mediumship, mentorship, house and business parties, energy healing, palm readings, and so much more. Refined Divine has helped thousands, and she can help you.
Hi, this is Psychic Medium Deb. I cannot wait to hear from you. You can go to refineddivinepsychic.com.
Greg Bakun here. Like you, I love good, fresh, delicious food. So I want to tell you about this treasure in Roseville called Maverick's Real Roast Beef. Maverick's has the best roast beef sandwiches I've ever had. Made fresh every order. Add fries or onion rings dropped in the fryer when ordered, and you have a winning combination. Maverick's Real Roast Beef has a lot more than roast beef, so check out their website, mavericksbeef.com, or check out their restaurant on Lexington in Roseville. And join me tomorrow on GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. We are going to have yet another talented author on with us tomorrow. We're going to have on Julie Meadows. And Julie wrote a book about the Calumet Inn in Pipestone, Minnesota. It's a very haunted location, but the book is called Calumet Inn, the Jewel of the Prairie. And it's just talking about the history. And it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been to, and I've been there a number of times. We're going to be talking to Julie about that book tomorrow. Wednesday is the return of One Question Readings with Refined Divine. You want to definitely tune in for that. Thursday, we have a replay with Rob Guttrow and Monique Toussoon talking about their new book. Well, it was new at the time, and it's still available, so you want to get that. Casual Friday. And also want to remind people that on Wednesday, Billy's in Anoka, Ghost Stories and Beyond, we're going to have with us author Renee Valois. She was with us back in January, February, talking about her book, Haunting Collections, and she is going to be there in person. We can talk about the book. We could talk about how she is got the stories that she did put in the book, or maybe you can share your stories with her. Once again, that's going to be at Billy's in Anoka. That's going to be at 6:30 p.m. Please come out. Don't forget, half-price burgers on Wednesday. It's going to be a lot of fun. Our guest tonight is author Christopher Bahn. We've been talking about these paranormal books for the young reader. The books are Near-Death Experience, Sea Monsters, Atlantis, Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, Area 51. The way I was thinking about it, Christopher, is that this is something, if you don't have kids per se, it shouldn't stop you. If you have nieces, nephews, if you have family that people who have young kids that they would be interested in this, let them know, right? Get them to somewhere to get the books. And where can they get these books from, Christopher?
Well, you can get them on your, the usual places that sell books on the internet. I don't know if I can say the names.
Yep, go for it.
Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, things like that. You can also get them directly from Creative Company's website, which is thecreativecompany.us. And probably the easiest way to find them is to go to my website, which is ChristopherBahn.com. Because it's the most recent thing that I've published, I've got them right at the top of the page. And if you click on the link that goes directly to the books, I've got all kinds of links to go to Creative Company's website and, Amazon and Goodreads. Please give it a good rating if you liked it.
Absolutely.
All of that stuff. So
that's fantastic. No, that's great. Now I got to ask you, and I don't want to derail the program here, but what would you think if you talked to somebody that you know and they said that they saw Bigfoot?
I'd want to know all about it. I'd want them to tell me the story. And I don't, if you're wondering if I would judge them or anything
I wouldn't. I honestly never would have thought that. I'm just kind of curious your process when that would happen.
If nothing else, I'm curious to know, I have friends who thinks that they saw, possible spaceships and things like that. And the stories aren't definitive or anything. It's not like you saw the Millennium Falcon landing or anything like that. But, they're like, what was that? I don't understand. And I think with anything like that, just hearing the story would be fascinating. You'd, maybe, of course, you'd wonder, what's going on in the person's head. But it would be a fascinating story, if nothing else. Yeah. And if they had more evidence besides that, I'd love to see that too.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, because everyone has their own experiences. I've seen it twice, and both 2 nights in a row, actually. And the first night both nights were with multiple people. So there's all sorts of interesting things that go around it, and trust me, as somebody who has seen this stuff, you can't expect people to believe it just off of what you say. I mean, I totally get that. I have people because I know a lot of paranormal teams and people who have experienced ghosts and stuff, and someone comes to me and they say what they saw, and I don't really know them that well or whatever, or what they experienced, is my first inclination to be like, well, that's a no-brainer. I totally get it. Yes. It honestly, like you, it isn't. There is I'd like to know more. You hear so many people who, like you said, what's going on in their head, what was going on around them to have, like, if they say they saw spirit or some sort of ghost or something, what was the circumstance in the room at the time for whatever to happen happened. It's totally, and I think you have to be openly skeptical in those situations, because if you're not, you just can't believe. I personally can't. Maybe others can. You just can't believe everything that people tell you. Am I going to be rude about it? Absolutely not. That's your experience. I'm not going to take away from you, but it's not going to be a slam dunk like, oh wow, well done. Let's write a book about it. Nothing like that.
Yeah, I mean, even if ghosts are real, and we take that as a given that ghosts are real, there's still going to be, because it's human nature, there are still going to be people that are going to try and use that to fool people or make money off people in a bad way, or because people, not everyone, of course, but some people do bad things. Yeah. And some people, people will do this with the stock market or any other topic. Yeah. So like anything else, skepticism is just a good skill to have in life. And that's, sort of one of the underlying things. I keep motioning over here. That's because of work. I have these stack of books.
Can you hold one of those up? Because Linda was wondering, she asked if are your books less than 100 pages, printed with a perfect binding?
Well, there's 2 different versions. There's a paperback version and this, which is the library edition, which has the hardback. They're all 48 pages.
Those are nice looking.
Yeah, the art department did a really bang up job. I think the insides are full of pictures.
Yeah, that's really
just
nice.
Wonderful illustrations that they found. This is the Patterson Gimlin film of Bigfoot, probably the most famous Bigfoot film, and they managed to get that in there, which is good.
That's great. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forget what the question was.
Well, no, she wanted to know, and I think this would answer her question because you showed it, like books less than 100 pages printed with a perfect binding. So I think that answers good. They look great. Those are really nice looking books, and it reminds me. Do you remember these books? The Time Life series on the Paranormal. I mean, it would have been too out of my range in terms of when I was a kid seeing them. Like I'd be out over my head for sure. But it's kind of something like that, just like really nice looking binding and just like really something like a lot of care went into them. And I like that. Those look really good.
I had a couple of them, but I didn't have the whole set. And I got them used, but I literally wore them out, and I don't have them anymore because they fell apart and I had to get rid of them. But
I remember just a couple of years ago I ran across, like you go to eBay, you can get full sets, and it's like a full set was like $75 or something, and I was like, I'm gonna get this, and I'm like, are you though? What are you gonna do with this? I mean, first of all, it's I mean, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what sort of concepts are in there that have now been debunked or whatever else. And I just find, I don't need these. I really don't. They look great, but your room there looks a lot like parts of my house too, right? We collect a lot of stuff. I don't need these. I don't need these Time Life books.
Yeah.
So.
This I have gotten rid of at least 5 times as much as what's behind me, and this is just what I can fit. I've got, I'm in a corner of my basement over here, and I've got a whole set of stuff in cardboard boxes. I just have too much stuff. I'm a collector.
I am too, right? And first of all, us being Doctor Who fans, the fact that this thing has been going, for 63 years, that alone, just without even trying, you're collecting a lot of stuff. I mean, just so much.
I have on the side that the camera can't see, I have about.
Oh, you got your Omega.
I have probably 100 of these on the shelf above me.
Yeah,
different ones. I've got all the Doctors. I've got most of not everything that the character options people have put out, but a pretty decent chunk of whatever.
You've helped keep them in business. Let's just put it that way, right? I mean, you've done a decent job with it, and so have I. And it's just it's there, and they just came out with, and what was it that they just did? Oh, it was a third Doctor with sonic screwdriver and stuff, and I'm like, no, I don't need that. I don't know if you got it, but I was like, no, I don't need this.
I already have 2 third Doctors, so I don't need another one.
Right? No, I mean, it's just because you keep getting new sets, and they'll keep putting some of the same action figures in sets, or like they do these multiple Doctor sets, and it's just, people like us, we just can't help it. Doug in the comments says you better have some screwdrivers, some sonic screwdrivers. You got some sonic screwdrivers over there, Christopher?
I have. I can reach it. In fact, I have a 10th Doctor screwdriver.
Nice.
It used to make the noise, but the battery is long since burned out. That's the only sonic screwdriver I've got, but it did get used by a family friend's son. Wanted to go as the 10th Doctor for Halloween.
Oh,
and
nice.
Borrowed it, so I was happy to see it get some actual use by a Doctor for at least one night.
I haven't seen that in a while. Not that I'm paying attention. I haven't seen a lot of kids dress up over the last couple of years for Doctor Who, like trick-or-treating. And I mean, for me, it seemed like that height of it was, to me, the Matt Smith era. Like, it seemed to have been very popular. And one year I had a couple of kids separately show up dressed as the 11th Doctor, and it was really really interesting. But I don't have any sonic screwdrivers, as it happens. I don't have one. Maybe I'm not a good fan. I don't know. maybe I'm not. We have about 2.5 minutes left here. Are you working on? You said you're working on a series of books for, what do you say, alternative energy?
Yeah, it's 5 books. It's solar, nuclear, hydropower, geothermal power, and biofuels. and it's the same. The format is kind of the same as these books, just trying to explain the basics of what it is and the history of the different energies. Hopefully, it's naturally a little bit more of a dry subject than Bigfoot is, but hopefully I made it interesting enough. I just turned in the last one just a couple of hours before this show.
Wow!
So I have yet to find out what my editors think, but hopefully they liked it.
What's the turnaround on something like that? Like, what if you turn it in now, how far down the road is that going to get a release date?
About a year. I wrote these books. I wrote the paranormal books in late 2023.
Oh my goodness!
And they finally came out, I think, in January of this year.
Of this year, yeah. I saw them on the. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and I as I understand it, that's pretty common in books.
Sure.
I come from like I was saying, I come from more of a journalism background where, newspapers, you have a day of a turnaround, and websites, you can just put it up right away.
Yeah.
And books, it just takes a lot longer, just as the nature of the beast.
Now, once again, if you want to learn more about Christopher Bahn, go to ChristopherBahn.com. I highly recommend that you do so. And you can get the books over at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere. You just look for them. And what a great gift for young readers, for sure. Christopher, this was great. I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed this.
I'm happy to hear that. We'll be back tomorrow with Julie Meadows. Everyone, have a fantastic night.